Hello, everybody. Jeffrey Bartell here, and today we're going to be watching the tenth, and probably the final watch event to the January 6th Select Committee hearings. I don't know what to expect in this one, but let's try and find out, shall we? And sorry about the black screen. Don't worry, it'll come up. Don't worry, the screen will come up eventually. But in the meantime, hold on a second. As I was saying, a screen will pop up eventually. So in the meantime, get yourselves ready for this. Whatever you have to do, go to the bathroom. Go to the bathroom, eat breakfast.
Something went wrong. Try again in a few seconds.
As I was saying, eat breakfast, get a drink, whatever you need to do. Whatever you need to do to get yourselves ready for this meeting. It's gonna be long. Don't want you to, miss out on it. Alrighty? Alrighty? We'll take it. Well, see you when the meeting starts. Should be starting at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. 10:30 a.m. 10:30 a.m. Mountain Time. 11:30 a.m. Central Time, and 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, I'm going to see what I can pull up on what we got so far in this hearing. Nothing. Wikipedia doesn't show that much. It's not showing that much any. All it's showing is just Bennie Thompson is the chairman, representative, and Liz Cheney, a true Republican, probably, I think, as the vice chair and representative of Republican Party. She did lose her election, yes, but she did the right thing. Even if we fail to prosecute Trump, and he does run, it could probably still be a win-win for us, because there's a good chance Ron DeSantis could be running too, and most Republican backers that were backing Trump are now backing him. They're turning their backs on Trump, and if this happens, this could actually split the party in two, especially if Trump runs independent. And it could create their own party, which could benefit the Democrats. And if this happens, there's a good chance we could still prosecute Trump. And which is good news. Right? Right? I hope so, anyway. Anyway, here's the video link. They're just put in the chat. So get yourselves ready, because I bet 9:30 is the time it'll start. I hope, anyway. Just wish they tell us like 2 weeks in advance or something. Anyway, we'll get to it. Get yourselves ready for this meeting, because it's a long one, and I don't want you to have to skip out because you have to do something else. Alrighty? Get to it.
that
Recording
many
in
won't show up today, I'm
progress.
sure. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Welcome. Glad to see you're all here.
Hey, Carolyn.
Hello.
I'm glad. I was about to give up and do my own meeting, but when I found yours, I just joined on.
Oh, well, thank you.
Good morning,
Nice of you.
everyone. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning, Brittany. Morning, Matthew and Zach. Hi, Chuck.
Oh wait, can we do something fun before we start the
No.
the video?
What is it that you're asking for?
Like ask the people what we're gonna expect from the in this meeting.
We're gonna talk about stuff, Jeffrey.
And
Please just remember that I need you to mute and raise your hand if you want to speak, so you can be called on. That's so everybody else can have a chance to speak to you. But we always covered what the topic of the day is going to be. If you'd like to put in your name in the chat where you're joining from, that'd be great. Okay, I'm sure, sir, that I'm going to misspell your name if I needed to call on you. Yes, Mr. Is it Rao? Your last name Rao? Is it Venkateshwar?
Yeah.
Oh, I got it. Okay. All right. I don't like to butcher people's names, so thank you for confirming that. Welcome. I'm in Olympia, Washington,
Yes.
and our co-host Joe is in Idaho. So we've got folks, it looks like, from so far mostly like Western U.S., but some from the East. And yes, the Coast Salish tribal lands, Chuck, yep, in Olala. All right, so what I need to do, I had to switch computers at the last moment here. So I'm going to ask everybody, if you're not speaking, to please put yourself on mute so that background noises don't interfere with anybody's ability to hear what's going on today. And then at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the reaction button. You can click on that to raise your hand or type your question in the chat. And Joe will keep an eye on the chat for me. You might find me during the hearing going through and adding notes to the chat. Feel free to do so yourself. We're going to leave the chat open. That's what it's there for. We just ask everyone to be polite about it and share your thoughts as we go through this. So the very first question really truly is what people, well, first, what I want to ask you is, can you drop one word into the chat about how you're feeling about this hearing today? What kind of feeling does it bring up? Is it anxiety or anticipation? Thankful?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but your camera's kind of blurred.
Yeah, it's something to do with this particular computer, and I tried to fix that. I'm unable to fix that, but during the hearing, I will have my camera off. So thank you for that, though, Jeffrey. Great, awesome, glad to see that. How about the rest of you? How are you feeling about this? Hopeful and concerned, hopeful but resigned. Chuck, do you want to say more about that?
Well, I am hopeful that as the last committee hearings have taken place, that a lot of the actual things that have happened and the truth has come out and brought forward. And I'm hopeful that this wrap up to the committee is going to really kind of put a nail in the coffin. But I'm kind of resigned to the fact that this isn't a legal proceeding and that who knows where it's going to go from here. And so I'm just kind of like, it's another brick in the wall, but at the same time, I'm not sure if the bricks are being placed quickly enough.
Yeah, I think we all have, this is so unprecedented in our history that it's a bit hard to know exactly what to expect. I think that most Americans that are paying attention to this issue really want to see action taken and accountability had. But you know, it remains to be seen. I was a little wary at first when Merrick Garland assigned a special prosecutor, but I am now thankful that he did as the special prosecutor. That's his primary focus, and so he's moving forward and at a much quicker pace than what we've seen before. Jeffrey, your hands up. Jeffrey,
I wanted to follow up on what that person said. What's his name?
Chuck.
Chuck. I wanted to follow. My mother told me this, that even if we don't prosecute him and Trump runs, there's a good chance we could still win, because how can I put this? If Ron DeSantis, the people that used to back him are now turning their backs on him. You know, Mitch McConnell and all those kind of people. Now they're now supporting Ron DeSantis, and if Trump runs as an independent, that could actually split the Republican Party in two, from the MAGAs to the regular Republicans, and we could still win this whole thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think,
yeah, I do, but I'm just wondering, with the Republicans taking control of the House here coming here in January, just a few days away, what kind of shenanigans they're going to try to pull to just block everything and just do away with all the progress that's been made. And I'm not too worried about presidential election and such, you know, in 2 more years, as I am right now about Trump and his cohorts being served justice. That's what I'm kind of focusing on now. And just wary.
And one good cohort is sorry if I mispronounced that, but one good example of a cohort is Marjorie Greene Taylor, right?
Right.
She definitely needs to be prosecuted, or at least banned from office, because all that stuff she's saying, oh my god, I'm surprised no one has prosecuted her just yet, or investigated her.
Well, we're gonna see. There may be additional individuals who have charges recommended by the committee. Also, it is a bit early to be talking about 2024 in terms of, can Trump win or can Trump lose? Can we win? Can we lose? We're on track to win. We just have to make sure that we keep doing the work, that we stay committed and we stay engaged and we're doing the work. This morning I went through a ton of stuff on going just back through everything that we've seen and heard from the committee up until now. And today there was one article that just went through just what legal cases are pending against the former president. There's so much going on, and I have to believe that the conclusion that some folks are coming to is the right one, and that is that Trump is really, really, really concerned about all this, and he's back out there again, out of control. This weekend, he again reissued exactly the same call to action he issued on January 6th from the stage, and there's a lot of concern about what's going to happen with that. One of the things that I went back and I looked through, and I didn't do it in enough detail to be able to address it and tell you point by point what it is, but I went back and I was looking at the information on what the recommendations were from the initial House report that was put out by the Homeland Security Committee in the House, and the recommendations that were made on how to improve the security around Congress. Because of course, the Republicans want to blame it all on the Capitol Police, the Metro Police, everybody but themselves. And One
That's
thing I heard,
that's what you
and
call.
I can't for the life of me remember his name. He's a former general. He was in charge in Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina, and he was the one who conducted the investigation and helped offer up the report from the House Homeland Security Department and or committee, and that was with recommendations on how to harden our capital to be sure that that something like this can't happen again. And originally the ask in that was for $2.9 billion. And the House only approved, as I understand it, 1.9, I believe, $billion. And most of that did not go to hardening the capital in any way, shape, or form. It went to paying for the National Guard who had to be there on January 6th and in the weeks following. It went to pay for the overtime for all the different police departments and all the extra man hours that people had to put in, and to other things like that. So a lot of it did not go directly to hardening things. And so there still remains a lot of deficiencies. And it'll be interesting to see what this committee says in terms of recommendations. It's one thing to do a committee report and look at how what laws need to be changed. It's another one to actually act on that. And so that's what we want. That's what we want them to do. David, your hand's up. Oh, you're muted, David. Can you unmute, David?
Yeah, the problem is not just Trump, it's Trumpism.
Yes.
And the way it's infiltrated the entire Republican Party. And they were headed in the wrong direction to begin with anyway. They've been chipping away at both democracy and the government in general in favor of corporate power and corporate profits, because they're entirely informed by lobbyists that have taken charge of Washington. And it just, I mean, even part of the Democratic Party is undermined. And it really takes a grassroots effort like we've never seen before to address the real problems that underlie society that had never been addressed. The things pushed into the background, like never really coming to terms with the aftermath of slavery. There was never a complete acceptance of Black Americans as Americans. And that has to change, as does the fact that we have raped and pillaged the environment for the last 200 years. And now we're about to pay the consequences, but there's still time to turn aside the very worst consequences if we get busy right away. No new fossil fuel infrastructure of any kind. And even the Biden administration is going along with that. And that's just not acceptable. So the people have got to speak. And one thing that the Democratic Party has failed at and needs to do is to reach out beyond the urban-rural divide and start reconnecting with people in the rural areas. And we can do that at the grassroots level, even within King County and certainly within Western Washington. And again, in regions that make a certain amount of environmental sense, that we need to support each other, because as climate change moves in, we are all going to have to face major, major changes in the way we live. And that's why I'm putting a lot of my effort into 350 Seattle. And
for those who don't know, that's a large environmental group in Washington State.
Yeah, we need to take it extremely seriously. The UN seems to be the only governmental organization that's really taking it seriously. To some extent, Washington State is doing a pretty good job, but we're planning to build a liquid natural gas terminal in Tacoma, and that's a pretty dreadful idea. This is also where we find unity with indigenous people in our own country and around the world.
Mhm.
So this is not just the US movement, it's also an international movement. Certainly January 6th is an important part of it, to make accountable the people who engineered this failed coup. Thank goodness it failed. And the trouble is it may not fail next time, especially if it has the backing of more of the fossil fuel industry, which still has a great deal of power that needs to be broken.
Yeah, it does. Bringing up fossil fuels, one thing everybody can be doing and should be doing is calling their senators, whether Republican or Democrat, and telling them no on Manchin's dirty deal. I understand why folks would say, okay, we'll bring it up for a vote later as a way of accomplishing the prior bill, but that doesn't mean that we have to see it pass. So Manchin's dirty deal, that's all you got to say, and you want your senators to oppose it. I say this in my other meetings as well, but that you can't get in trouble for calling your senator's office too often or writing them too often, unless the content is something in and of itself you'd get in trouble for. But I'm saying that, you can call or write or send email or text through ResistBot, your requests and to your US senators. And I strongly urge everybody to be doing that right now. Thank you, David, so much. Yeah, 1/6 is a huge major event in this country's history. It remains to be seen how the story will be told and what the conclusion will be, but we do also have to have a global view of how all of this fits in with everything else. Thank you. Brittany, good morning, Brittany.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm very grateful about this hearing, because this is the last hearing that we have been watched, and what if, and I come in agreement with David. We all about our movement, because that we definitely gonna have to call the senators or the representative, whether it's I suggest that the Democrats and we're gonna stop we need to stop and
Just stop.
yeah, just say no. And
say no to, sorry, I'm just trying to get a little clarification, Brittany.
yeah, say no to the Manchin's dirty
yes,
word.
they do.
And most basically this is why we're getting involved with the January 6th campaign and stuff, and I'm hosting the rally for the 2-year anniversary of the insurrection, and I cannot wait to hear the hearings. I cannot wait to what the hearing is all about, and what we have inspire of that. And
well, thank you, Brittany. Yeah, I know that you are hosting a rally And we too are also on January 6th, the 2-year anniversary, from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Pacific time. So that's 7:30 to 9 p.m. Eastern time on Friday, January 6th. We're going to come together for a discussion on the report, which will be issued in 2 days. And Amazon keeps telling me I'll have it by Thursday. So there are, you can purchase it if you like, but the bottom line is the report will be made available on the committee's website. It is free for all of us to see. We ask that, you know, if you're interested in discussing the report after it has come out and you've had a chance to digest some of it, that'd be a great opportunity to do it. Thanks, Brittany. Jeff, I see a question in there from Brett asking what the dirty deal bill is. What that is Manchin wants, you know, first off, let me say a coal magnate should not be in charge of the Senate Energy Committee. I mean, that just is a conflict of interest from A to Z. There's no way around that. Yeah, David, I see you. He shouldn't be in charge of that committee. But what he did is in order to get him to vote yes on the prior bill, they had to promise him that they would allow him to bring to the floor a vote on a bill that is intended to cut down on the permitting, and it includes a pipeline in West Virginia, and it will speed up and make easier some of the fossil fuel exploration and taking of the resources. So we don't want that. Coal is a dying industry. It needs to be a dying industry. That's kind of funny to call it that, given the fact that coal is because, you know, animals died centuries and more than decades, centuries and centuries ago. And that's how we ended up with these fossil fuels. But we need to say no to that. And he's not watching out for the best interest of either his state or the country. He's looking out for his own bottom line. So nobody guaranteed him it would pass when it was brought up for a vote. I hope that helps, Brett. Jeffrey, your hand's up.
Yeah, but all the stuff though. Oh wait, you know, the coup. Oh yeah, I think the coup. Oh yeah, I'm putting some links down, and they're in the comments. So for two things, let me say them real quick. Okay, for one, we can learn a lot from countries, like especially how the how we can learn from New Zealand how to properly pay compensation for those Native Americans we you know did, and two, a White House former Secret Service agent and a fighter pilot reacted to the scenes from scenes like White House Down and the other from Olympus Has Fallen, you know, to see if what happens in the movie is plausible.
Well, we could go down a lot of rabbit holes.
You know,
that kind of seems like a bit of a rabbit hole to me, to be looking at movies from Hollywood and wondering, can that happen in real life? But I appreciate you sharing the links, Jeffrey. Thank you. We're going to be going here in a moment to the hearing. They're gathering in the meeting room. Looks like everybody's trying to find seats. And now, for the life of me, I cannot recall his last name, and I apologize for that because I should. But another of the Capitol Police who was injured and has been going through a lot, finally resigned his job in the past week or two, which is sad to say, because it's not an easy job to get into, regardless of what most people think. And once you're there, it's really hard to change to go someplace else or to leave it, because people who enter it, for the most part, enjoy their job of helping people. So I'm sure he went through a struggle in deciding to retire. But is the hearing going to be shared on screen in Zoom? Yes, it is. We will keep everybody muted during the hearing. The chat will remain open so that any comments that you have while we're going through this, you can make there. We just ask people to be polite about what they put in there. And when we're done, we'll all stay here, or at least all of us who are interested in it, and have a discussion afterwards on what we heard and what we saw. So I'm going to start sharing my screen only so that you can see where we are at the moment, and we'll be all ready to go when it begins. Right now, they're just advertising, I guess. I need to turn on my sound so that you guys can hear it when it begins. And I will be turning off my camera, but I will still be here listening right along with you. Any final last questions? I can't see my chat when I'm in share mode. Joe, do we have any other questions in the chat?
No. Yeah, you covered the last one about being having it shared, so I didn't see anything.
Okay. Jeff, real quick, Jeffrey.
Well, for all of us, let's just pray that this goes well. You know?
Okay, thank you for that. Okay. So Officer Fanone there. I've ordered his book. I haven't read it yet.
Oh yeah, you know how to turn on the volume?
Yes, I do, Jeffrey.
So I just didn't want to just miss anything, if you know what I mean.
I got it.
Alrighty.
Thank you. Thanks. So I don't have the volume on now until we get it going here. Any last thoughts? I said it right the first time. Now I won't be able to. Venkateshwar?
You have
like
yeah.
Yes, you can call me my last name, Rao.
Rao? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, this is out. This is out of the. Question. I was recently in India about the India, one of the state that is Telangana. So one of my friend is in America. He's a college professor. He just he told me to that ask the state government to establish the U.S. college over there. One of the minister, he's a state government minister. He's a cabinet minister. His name is Jagdish Reddy. So very hard to go over there and to meet him. There is like a cult. They maintain cult. We need to some kind of approval by the and then finally I went through him and I talking to there. And then one of the police officer, unnecessarily, there is no nuisance, nothing. I was in the middle talking, and he grabbed my hand and he took me out. There is no respect for Indian citizens, US citizens in out of other world. But they come over here, they come here to work, they work here and they're living good, living like a red carpet. They're not even citizens. They work on H-1B visas. We respect all them, but being a US citizen, if you go there, we're just talking about the US government, US college things, they're pulling out, there's no respect. They against the US policies and US government. One of basically the cult I told you, that is the name REDDY, Reddy, REDDY. Those are the cult. Those cult are terrorist cult. Even though a lot of those people in the US also. In the US also. The terror network in worldwide. So what is my question is, why we don't have any respect if you go in abroad, being a US citizen, but all people come here as treating like a VIPs, but we're treating like a junk over there.
Yeah,
That is not fair.
that's not
But
a question that we can really answer at the moment. And they're getting ready to start the presentation, the hearing. Rao, what I would ask you to do is if you have any articles regarding this, I mean, I think I understand what you're asking about, what you're saying, but if you have any information to share that you can with links in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated. I'm sorry, I'm going to turn on the volume here to make sure that you can all hear it. You should be able to hear the background noise. There's not anybody talking or anything at the moment. Let me just make sure that it's turned up enough. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to hear it. Okay. Can you hear the background noise? Can you hear it's live?
No, no,
You can't hear rustling around in the background?
no.
I can hear. I think I can hear it.
Okay. Yeah, it's not like it's white noise, low white noise in the background. There's a gavel. Yeah. I want to go back and say again, thank you, Rao. I did not intend to leave you just hanging there. It just it's time for us, I think, to get going.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. This is the first time I'm coming here. Yeah, sure.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Welcome. I'm going to turn off my camera because your audio is breaking up a little bit, and I don't know if that's on your end or my end. So also, if you have any issues with the sound starting to break up on your computer, if you have your camera turned on, you can turn off the video, and that should increase your bandwidth and be able to hear okay. So yeah, of course, they're not started on time, but they'll be getting going soon. You know, my son asked me if I thought that, you know, the former president would be going to prison. And I said, you know, I have to hope so. I'm not going to, I don't feel like being a fatalist and saying nothing's going to happen to him, because I think we're seeing a change in norms when it comes to, he changed a lot of norms, and now the norms are changing to adjust to him. And Americans won't accept this kind of corruption and kind of efforts to overthrow our government. David's right about that. It's grassroots that are picking things up and getting things done, and we need to really make sure that we don't just think that we can start in again in 18 months before the next presidential election. This is work that we do that needs to be on an ongoing basis. So anyway, thank you everybody for being here. In the chat, does anybody have any thing that they're especially looking for to hear in this? Is there something particular that you want to hear in this hearing? Besides the charges against Trump and apparently the forwarding the recommendations for criminal charges against Trump and okay, what's his name? Oh, it'll come to me. I'm sorry. It was an early morning and I haven't completed my first cup of coffee even after all that time. Eastman, thank you, Joe. Joe is my go-to. She reminds me whenever I can't remember somebody's name or what's going on. So I'm going to ask you, Jeffrey, if you have a comment or question, if you can put it in the chat, because I want to be sure that we're not talking when this begins. And it looks like they're just about ready. The witnesses are seated. The anticipation of it all, right? When this gets going, I will enlarge this a bit. Well, I didn't want to enlarge it that much. Matthew, I also hope they will point out the culpability of many members of Congress, even if they're currently their own colleagues. You know, thank you for bringing that up. We sent letters asking the committee to hold a public hearing on the actions of members of Congress and recommended they started with those who requested pardons. I heard something that I only heard it the once, but we may hear about it, I'm sure, today, that there was some concern about sending criminal referrals for sitting members of Congress in either house to the Department of Justice,
And running just
because
a bit behind schedule, but expected to start shortly, the last public meeting of the January 6th committee. It'll be presenting its findings on the attack on the U.S. Capitol. It's been reported the committee's also planning to make criminal referrals to the Justice Department based on evidence that's collected from more than 1,000 witnesses. Some of those witnesses who testified in public over the course of the committee's year-and-a-half-long investigation will be appearing today. A reminder, if you missed any of the previous hearings, or if you want to watch them again, visit our webpage, cspan.org/January 6.
So what I was saying was that if they were to make criminal referrals, excuse me, somebody's having trouble getting in, just a second. Alpina, I sent the link. Okay, I'll try to send it to you again. I will. Okay, bye. Okay, sorry about that. Back to what I was saying, that there was they're concerned about submitting criminal recommendations was because as soon as the Republicans were to take control of the House, they could withdraw those recommendations. So I think that there was some discussion about referring those in the House to the House Ethics Committee. I don't know what that would look like for sure, but they are the enemies within, these folks are, in our government, and we can't have people who want to overthrow our government running it because they're doing exactly what they wanted to do, which is destroying it from within or making every effort to. So yes, the volume should be up high. Did you hear, Rebecca, did you hear when the narrator was speaking about it was going to begin soon? Hopefully, okay. Joe, did you hear it?
Yes, I did. It helps if I turn up my volume on my computer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
Yes, okay. I heard it.
Okay.
Yes, I heard it.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Okay, so
A quorum
here we go. Can you hear it now?
The Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol will be in order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare the committee in recess at any point. Pursuant to House Deposition Authority Regulation 10, the chair announces the committee's approval to release the deposition material presented during today's meeting, and further, its approval to release deposition material that accompanies release of the Select Committee's final report. Good afternoon, and may God bless the United States of America. To cast a vote in the United States is an act of faith and hope. When we drop that ballot in the ballot box, we expect the people named on the ballot are going to uphold their end of the deal. The winner swears an oath and upholds it. Those who come up short ultimately accept the results and abide by the rule of law. That faith in our system is the foundation of American democracy. If the faith is broken, so is our democracy. Donald Trump broke that faith. He lost the 2020 election and knew it. But he chose to try to stay in office through a multi-part scheme to overturn the results and block the transfer of power. In the end, He summoned a mob to Washington, and knowingly they were armed and angry, pointed them to the Capitol and told them to fight like hell. There's no doubt about this. This afternoon, my colleagues will present our key findings, reminding you of some of the information we presented in earlier hearings and telling you what fits in our broader conclusions. Those conclusions have helped shape the committee's final report, which we'll adopt today pursuant to House Resolution 503, which establishes the Select Committee nearly a year and a half ago. I expect our final work will be filed with the Clerk of the House and made public later this week. Beyond that release, the Select Committee intends to make public the bulk of its non-sensitive records before the end of the year. These transcripts and documents will allow the American people to see for themselves the body of evidence we've gathered and continue to explore the information that has led us to our conclusions. This committee is nearing the end of its work, but as the country, we remain in strange and uncharted waters. We've never had a president of the United States stir up a violent attempt to block the transfer of power. I believe nearly 2 years later, this is still a time of reflection and reckoning. If we are to survive as a nation of laws and democracy, this can never happen again. How do we stop it? This committee will lay out a number of recommendations in this final report, but beyond any specific details and recommendations we present, there's one factor I believe is most important in preventing another January 6th, accountability. So today, beyond our findings, we will also show that evidence we've gathered points to further action beyond the power of this committee or the Congress to help ensure accountability under law. Accountability that can only be found in the criminal justice system. We have every confidence that the work of this committee will help provide a roadmap to justice, and that the agencies and institutions responsible for ensuring justice under the law will use the information we've provided to aid in their work. And for those of you who have followed this committee's work, I hope we've helped make clear that there's a broader kind of accountability. Accountability to all of you, the American people. The future of our democracy rests in your hands. It's up to the people of this country to decide who deserves the public trust, who will put fidelity to the Constitution and democracy above all else, who will abide by the rule of law, no matter the outcome. I'm grateful to the millions of you who followed this committee's work. I hope we lived up to our commitment to present the facts and let the facts speak for themselves. Let me say in closing, the women and men seated around me on this dais are public servants in the most genuine sense. They put aside politics and partisanship to ensure the success of this committee in providing answers to the American people. I especially want to thank and acknowledge our Vice Chair, who has become a true partner in this bipartisan effort, Ms. Cheney of Wyoming. And I also recognize her for any opening statement that she cared to offer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your tremendous leadership of this committee. I know we all have benefited greatly from your wisdom and your wise counsel, so thank you very much. In April of 1861, when Abraham Lincoln issued the first call for volunteers for the Union Army, my great-great-grandfather, Samuel Fletcher Cheney, joined the 21st Ohio Volunteer Infantry. He fought through all 4 years of the Civil War, from Chickamauga to Stones River to Atlanta. He marched with his unit in the Grand Review of Troops up Pennsylvania Avenue in May of 1865, past a reviewing stand where President Johnson and General Grant were seated. Silas Canfield, the regimental historian of the 21st Ohio Volunteer Infantry, described the men in the unit this way. He said they had a just appreciation of the value and advantage of free government and the necessity of defending and maintaining it. And they enlisted, prepared to accept all the necessary labors, fatigues, exposures, dangers, and even death for the unity of our nation and the perpetuity of our institutions. I have found myself thinking often, especially since January 6th, of my great-great-grandfather and all those in every generation who have sacrificed so much for the unity of our nation and the perpetuity of our institutions. At the heart of our republic is the guarantee of the peaceful transfer of power. Members of Congress are reminded of this every day as we pass through the Capitol Rotunda. There, 8 magnificent paintings detail the earliest days of our republic. One, painted by John Trumbull, depicts the moment in 1793 when George Washington resigned his commission, handing control of the Continental Army back to Congress. Trumbull called this, quote, one of the highest moral lessons ever given the world. With this noble act, George Washington established the indispensable example of the peaceful transfer of power in our nation. Standing on the west front of the Capitol in 1981, President Ronald Reagan described it this way: the orderly transfer of authority as called for in the Constitution routinely takes place, as it has for almost 2 centuries, and few of us stop to think how unique we really are. In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony that we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle. Every president in our history has defended this orderly transfer of authority, except one. January 6th, 2021 was the first time one American president refused his constitutional duty to transfer power peacefully to the next. In our work over the last 18 months, the Select Committee has recognized our obligation to do everything we can to ensure this never happens again. At the beginning of our investigation, we understood that tens of millions of Americans had been persuaded by President Trump that the 2020 election was stolen by overwhelming fraud. And we also knew this was flatly false. We knew that dozens of state and federal judges had addressed and resolved all manner of allegations about the election. Our legal system functioned as it should, but our president would not accept the outcome. Among the most shameful of this committee's findings was that President Trump sat in the dining room off the Oval Office watching the violent riot at the Capitol on television. For hours, he would not issue a public statement instructing his supporters to disperse and leave the Capitol, despite urgent pleas from his White House staff and dozens of others to do so. Members of his family, his White House lawyers, virtually all those around him knew that this simple act was critical. For hours, he would not do it. During this time, law enforcement agents were attacked and seriously injured. The Capitol was invaded, the electoral count was halted, and the lives of those in the Capitol were put at risk. In addition to being unlawful, as described in our report, this was an utter moral failure and a clear dereliction of duty. Evidence of this can be seen in the testimony of President Trump's own White House counsel and several other White House witnesses. No man who would behave that way at that moment in time can ever serve in any position of authority in our nation again. He is unfit for any office. The committee recognizes that our work has only begun. It's only the initial step in addressing President Trump's effort to remain in office illegally. Prosecutors are considering the implications of the conduct that we describe in our report, as are citizens all across our nation. In 1761, John Adams wrote, "The very ground of our liberties is the freedom of elections." Faith in our elections and the rule of law is paramount to our republic. Election deniers, those who refuse to accept lawful election results, purposely attack the rule of law and the foundation of our country. The history of our time will show that the bravery of a handful of Americans doing their duty saved us from an even more grave constitutional crisis. Elected officials, election workers, and public servants stood against Donald Trump's corrupt pressure. Many of our committee's witnesses showed selfless patriotism, and their words and courage will be remembered. The brave men and women of the Capitol Police, the Metropolitan Police, and all the other law enforcement officers who fought to defend us that day saved lives and our democracy. Finally, I wish to thank my colleagues on this committee. It has been a tremendous honor to serve with all of you. We have accomplished great and important things together, and I hope we have set an example. And I also want to thank all of those who have honorably contributed to the work of our committee and to our report. We have accomplished much over a short period of time. Many of you sacrificed for the good of our nation. You have helped make history, and I hope helped to right the ship. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. As you know, this is our final meeting of our committee. Over the course of the last year and a half, we presented evidence in 10 public hearings, testimony from our brave law enforcement officers, senior White House, and campaign officials, and many others. Today, we are prepared to share our final findings with you. But before we do so, it's important to remember what we've learned, and critically, exactly what happened at the United States Capitol on January 6th. Without objection, I include in the record a video presentation of some of the key evidence our investigation has uncovered.
There were officers on the ground. They were bleeding. They were throwing up. I mean, I saw friends with blood all over their faces. I was slipping in people's blood.
As I was swarmed by a violent mob, they ripped off my badge. They grabbed and stripped me of my radio. They seized ammunition that was secured to my body. They began to beat me with their fists and with what felt like hard metal objects.
The key thing to do is to claim victory. No, we won. Fuck you. Sorry, over. We won. Yeah. You're wrong. Fuck you.
Right out of the box on election night, the president claimed that there was major fraud underway. I mean, this happened, as far as I could tell, before there was actually any potential of looking at evidence.
I didn't think what was happening was necessarily honest or professional at that point in time. So that led to me stepping away.
Generally discussed on that topic was whether the fraud, maladministration, abuse, or irregularities, if aggregated and read most favorably to the campaign, would that be outcome determinative? And I think everyone's assessment in the room, at least amongst the staff, Mark Short, myself, and Greg Jacob, was that it was not sufficient to be outcome determinative.
I told him that I did believe, yes, that once those legal processes were run, if fraud had not been established, that had affected the outcome of the election, that unfortunately I believed that what had to be done was concede the outcome.
What were the chances of President Trump winning the election?
After that point?
Yes.
None.
So what are we going to do here, folks? I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break.
The numbers are the numbers. The numbers don't lie. We had many allegations, and we investigated every single one of them.
Did one of them make a comment that they didn't have evidence, but they had a lot of theories?
That was Mr. Giuliani.
And what exactly did he say, and how'd that come up?
My recollection, he said, we've got lots of theories, we just don't have the evidence. You're asking me to do something that's never been done in history, the history of the United States. And I'm going to put my state through that without sufficient proof.
It's a tape earlier in the day of Ruby Freeman and Shay Freeman Moss and one other gentleman quite obviously, surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine.
In one of the videos we just watched, Mr. Giuliani accused you and your mother of passing some sort of USB drive to each other. What was your mom actually handing you on that video?
A ginger mint. Do you know how it feels to have the President of the United States to target you? The President of the United States is supposed to represent every American, not to target one.
I made it clear I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was bullshit.
He wanted to talk about that he thought the election had been stolen or was corrupt and that there was widespread fraud. And I had told him that our reviews had not shown that to be the case.
And I said something to the effect of, sir, we've done dozens of investigations, hundreds of interviews. The major allegations are not supported by the evidence developed.
Well, my first thought was, this is a terrible idea. Jeff Clark cannot be installed as acting Attorney General of the United States.
You ultimately told us that you described this meeting as not this meeting, the Georgia letter that was proposed as an effing murder-suicide pact. Do you remember using the term murder-suicide pact?
Yes.
Was it your impression that the Vice President had directly conveyed his position on these issues to the President, not just to the world through a Dear Colleague letter, but directly to President Trump?
Many times. My view is that the Vice President didn't have the legal authority to do anything except what he did.
And I said, hold on a second, I want to understand what you're saying. You're saying that you believe the Vice President, acting as President of the Senate, can be the sole decision maker as to, under your theory, who becomes the next president of the United States? And you said yes. And I said, are you out of your effing mind?
The president was, all the attention was on what Mike would do or what Mike wouldn't do.
There's a telephone conversation between the president and the vice president, is that correct?
Yes.
The conversation was pretty heated.
Apologize for being impolite, but do you remember what she said her father called him?
The P word. It was clear that it was escalating quickly. So then when that tweet, the Mike Pence tweet, was sent out, I remember us saying that was the last thing that needed to be tweeted at that moment. It felt like he was pouring gasoline on the fire by tweeting that.
They've gained access to the second floor, and I've got public about 5 feet from me down here below.
Okay, copy. They are on the second floor, moving in now. We may want to consider getting out and leaving now. Copy.
The members of the VP detail at this time were starting to fear for their own lives. There were calls to say goodbye to family members, so on and so forth.
Approximately 40 feet. That's all there was. 40 feet between the vice president and the mob.
Donald Trump and his allies and supporters are a clear and present danger to American democracy.
We got derogatory information from OSINT suggesting that some very, very violent individuals were organizing to come to D.C.
As Mr. Giuliani and I were walking to his vehicles that evening, he looked at me and said something to the effect of, Cass, are you excited for the 6th? It's going to be a great day. I remember looking at him saying, Rudy, could you explain what's happening on the 6th? He had responded something to the effect of, we're going to the Capitol. It's going to be great. The president's going to be there. He's going to look powerful.
He personally asked for us to come to D.C. that day. And I thought, for everything he's done for us, if this is the only thing he's going to ask of me, I'll do it.
Well, basically, the president, got everybody riled up, told everybody to head on down. So we basically were just following what he said.
Within 15 minutes of leaving the stage, President Trump knew that the Capitol was besieged and under attack.
So are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Secretary of Defense that day?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Attorney General of the United States that day?
No.
Are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Secretary of Homeland Security that day?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Did you ever hear the President
No.
ask for the National Guard? Did you ever hear the President ask for law enforcement response?
No.
You got an assault going on the Capitol of the United States of America. And there's nothing. No call, nothing, zero.
I remember Pat saying something to the effect of, Mark, we need to do something more. They're literally calling for the vice president to be effing hung. And Mark had responded something to the effect of, you heard him, Pat. He thinks Mike deserves it. He doesn't think they're doing anything wrong.
You on the staff did not want people to leave the Capitol.
On the staff?
In the White House.
I can't think of anybody, on that day who didn't want people to get out of the Capitol once particularly once the violence started. No. I mean,
What about the president?
Yeah.
well, she said the staff. So I answered.
No, I said in the White House.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought you said who else on the staff. I can't reveal communications, but obviously I think,
I said, good, John. Now I'm going to give you the best free legal advice you're ever getting in your life. Get a great effing criminal defense lawyer. You're going to need it.
General Flynn, do you believe in the peaceful transition of power in the United States of America?
Let's go. Another officer unconscious. The terrorist. What terrorist?
I don't want to say the election's over. I just want to say Congress has certified the results without saying the election's over, okay?
The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Lofgren, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the last 18 months, the Select Committee has conducted a congressional investigation of enormous scale, seeking to uncover the depth and breadth of ex-President Trump's multi-part plan to reverse the lawful outcome of the 2020 presidential election. We've compiled an immense volume of documents collected from countless individuals, law enforcement agencies, and federal and state authorities. Many of our efforts to get the evidence required litigation in federal court, including the U.S. Supreme Court. We've taken the testimony of hundreds of witnesses. Now, while we couldn't show them all during the hearings, we focused on those who were most central, including our ex-president's White House aides, his senior Department of Justice officials, and senior members of his campaign. Based on this assembled evidence, the Select Committee has reached a series of specific findings. Now, many of these findings pertain to what has been called the big lie, the enormous effort led by ex-President Trump to spread baseless accusations and misinformation in an attempt to falsely convince tens of millions of Americans that the election had been stolen from him. Beginning even before the election and continuing through January 6th and thereafter, Donald Trump purposely disseminated false allegations of fraud in order to aid his effort to overturn the 2020 election. Ex-President Trump's decision to declare victory falsely on election night wasn't a spontaneous decision. It was premeditated. The committee has evidence that ex-President Trump planned to declare victory and unlawfully to call for the vote counting to stop, and that he told numerous allies about his intent in the weeks before the election. The committee found that Mr. Trump raised hundreds of millions of dollars with false representations made to his online donors. The proceeds from his fundraising, we have learned, have been used in ways that we believe are concerning. In particular, the committee has learned that some of those funds were used to hire lawyers. We've also obtained evidence of efforts to provide or offer employment to witnesses. For example, one lawyer told a witness the witness could, in certain circumstances, tell the committee that she didn't recall facts when she actually did recall them. That lawyer also did not disclose who was paying for the lawyer's representation, despite questions from the client seeking that information. He told her, quote, "We're not telling people where funding is coming from right now." We've learned that a client was offered potential employment that would make her, quote, "financially very comfortable" as the date of her testimony approached by entities that were apparently linked to Donald Trump and his associates. These offers were withdrawn or didn't materialize as reports of the content of her testimony circulated. The witness believed this was an effort to affect her testimony, and we are concerned that these efforts may have been a strategy to prevent the committee from finding the truth. Throughout the post-election period, ex-President Trump was told repeatedly by his campaign advisors, government officials, and others there was no evidence to support his claims of election fraud. Even since our last hearing, the Select Committee has obtained testimony from new witnesses who've come forward to tell us about their conversations with ex-President Trump on this topic. Here is one of his senior advisors, Hope Hicks.
Seeing evidence of fraud on a scale that would have impacted the outcome of the election, and I was becoming increasingly concerned that we were damaging his legacy.
What did the president say in response to what you just described?
He said something along the lines of, nobody will care about my legacy if I lose. So that won't matter. The only thing that matters is winning.
Despite all that, he continued to purposely and maliciously make false claims, sometimes within a day of being told that a particular claim was false and unsupported by the evidence. By the time the Electoral College met to cast its votes on December 14th, 2020, a number of President Trump's senior staff, cabinet officials, and members of his family were urging him to facilitate a peaceful transition to the incoming administration. He disregarded their advice, and he continued to claim publicly that the election had been stolen from him. Numerous state and federal courts evaluated and rejected the Trump campaign's claims of voter fraud, including 11 judges appointed by ex-President Trump himself. Many of these courts issued scathing opinions, criticizing the lack of evidence that ex-President Trump and his allies had advanced to support their claims. Numerous individuals associated with these efforts have since acknowledged that they were unable to find sufficient evidence of fraud to affect the election results, including in testimony to this select committee. Still, ex-President Trump repeated those false claims and tried to convince his supporters the election was stolen. This was an attempt to justify overturning the lawful election results. Donald Trump knowingly and corruptly repeated election fraud lies, which incited his supporters to violence on January 6th. He continues to repeat his meritless claim that the election was stolen even today, and continues to erode our most cherished and shared belief in free and fair elections. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Building on his constant repetition of the big lie, President Trump engaged in an unprecedented effort to obstruct the joint session on January 6th, the proceeding where his electoral loss would be certified by Congress. This effort began in part in the states, which hold, count, and ultimately determine the winners of presidential elections. Many state officials were targeted by President Trump and his campaign. The local election workers he accused baselessly of election fraud, the state officials he pressured to stop the count or to find votes that didn't exist, and the state legislative officials he urged to disregard the popular will of the voters and their oath of office in order to name him the winner instead. Here are the Select Committee findings about President Trump's state pressure campaign. President Trump and his enablers repeatedly pressured state officials to take action to overturn the results of the election. The most dramatic example of this campaign of coercion was the president's January 2nd, 2021 call to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, in which the president urged the secretary to find 11,780 votes he needed to change the outcome in that state. During that call, President Trump again repeated conspiracy theories about the election that his own appointees at the Department of Justice had already debunked. Trump also made what Secretary Raffensperger apparently considered a threat, accurately considered a threat, suggesting that Raffensperger and his attorney, that they could be subject to criminal prosecution if they didn't follow through with his demands. Then, in repeated telephone calls and in-person meetings, Donald Trump pressured state elections officials and state legislators to alter official election results. But courageous public servants, including Republicans like Rusty Bowers, held firm and refused to put Donald Trump over their oath to the Constitution. When Donald Trump's pressure campaign did not achieve the results he wanted, he oversaw an effort to obtain and transmit false Electoral College ballots to Congress and the National Archives. The false ballots were created by fake Republican electors on December 14th. At the same time, the actual certified electors in those states were meeting to cast their votes for President Biden. By that point in time, election-related litigation was over in all or nearly all of these states, and Trump campaign election lawyers realized that the fake slates were unjustifiable on any grounds and may be unlawful. In spite of these concerns and the concerns of individuals in the White House counsel's office, President Trump and others proceeded with this plan. The Select Committee has developed evidence that these intentionally false documents were transmitted to multiple officers of the federal government and were intended to interfere with the proper conduct of the joint session, where the existence of so-called competing slates of electors would serve as a pretext for legitimate electoral votes to be rejected. President Trump repeatedly attacked state and local officials who refused to do his bidding, as well as local elections workers who he baselessly accused of fraud. As Ruby Freeman and the testimony of other elections officials so powerfully demonstrated, the people who drew President Trump's ire or were the subject of his lies faced real-world consequences, including public harassment and death threats. Some of these elections workers and officials have been forced to leave their homes. Others have been forced to leave the jobs they loved. Take a listen to Ms. Freeman's story.
Now
I won't even introduce myself by my name anymore. I get nervous when I bump into someone I know in the grocery store who says my name. I'm worried about who's listening. I get nervous when I have to give my name for food orders. I'm always concerned of who's around me. I've lost my name and I've lost my reputation.
The treatment of Ms. Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss and so many others around the country was callous, inhuman, inexcusable, and dangerous. And those responsible should be held accountable. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Kinzinger, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly one of the many important components of our federal government is the Department of Justice. It's the body that it's responsible for enforcing our laws and investigating criminal wrongdoing. For this reason, it's of the utmost importance that our Department of Justice operates as a fair and neutral body that enforces our federal laws without fear or without favor. It is this critical function that President Trump sought to corrupt, as he sought to use the Department of Justice to investigate and prosecute purported election fraud and to help him convince the public that the election was stolen. The Select Committee has made the following findings with respect to the Department of Justice. In the weeks immediately following the 2020 election, Attorney General Bill Barr advised President Trump that the Department of Justice had not seen any evidence to support Trump's theory that the election was stolen by fraud. No evidence. Over the course of the 3 meetings in this post-election period, Attorney General Barr assured President Trump that the Justice Department was properly investigating claims of election fraud. He debunked numerous election fraud claims, many of which the president would then go on to repeat publicly. And he made clear that President Trump was doing, quote, a great disservice to the country by pursuing them. After Attorney General Barr's resignation, President Trump requested that the acting leadership of the department, Jeffrey Rosen and Richard Donahue, quote, just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman. In other words, just tell a small lie to put the facade of legitimacy on this lie, and the Republican congressman and I can distort and destroy and create doubt all ourselves. Between December 23rd and January 3rd, President Trump called or met with them nearly every day and was told repeatedly the department investigation showed no factual support for Trump's fraud allegations. Mr. Rosen and Mr. Donahue told him that the fraud claims were simply untrue. As Mr. Rosen and Mr. Donahue continued to resist, President Trump then tried to install a loyalist named Jeffrey Clark to lead the department as acting attorney general. On several occasions, Clark met with the president, apparently along with Representative Scott Perry, without authorization, promising to take the actions that Barr, Rosen, and Donahue had refused to take. In particular, Mr. Clark intended to send a letter that he had drafted with the help of a political appointee that the White House installed at DOJ with just weeks left in the administration. Mr. Clark intended to send the letter to officials in numerous states, informing them falsely, of course, that the department had identified significant concerns about the election results in their state and encouraging their state legislatures to come into special session to consider appointing Trump rather than Biden electors. Here's Acting Deputy Attorney General Donahue describing his reaction to Mr. Clark's proposed letter.
Some drafting letters without the knowledge of what the department had actually done in terms of investigations, that he was being reckless. And I recall toward the end saying, what you're proposing is nothing less than the United States Justice Department meddling in the outcome of a presidential election.
Knowing that existing department leadership would not support his false election claims, President Trump offered Mr. Clark the job of acting attorney general. In a dramatic January 3rd meeting in the Oval Office, Rosen Donahue, White House counsel Pat Cipollone, and White House lawyer Eric Hirschman strongly objected to the appointment of Jeffrey Clark as acting Attorney General. Mr. Clark pleaded his case and offered to send the letter that he had drafted. The White House counsel called the Clark letter, quote, a murder-suicide pact. Numerous White House and Department of Justice lawyers all threatened to resign if Mr. Clark was appointed. Donald Trump would be leading a graveyard. It was only after the threat of mass resignations that President Trump rescinded his offer to Mr. Clark. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Former President Trump's multi-part plan didn't stop with the states or with the Department of Justice. It touched nearly every component of our federal system, ranging from the courts to Congress to his own Vice President, Mike Pence. In the weeks before January 6th, Mr. Trump turned to the man who had served him loyally for 4 years. He embraced an illegal scheme proposed by John Eastman and others who concocted an unfounded legal theory that the vice president could reject Joe Biden's electoral votes during the joint session. When Vice President Pence and many others, including Trump's own lawyer, John Eastman, told him correctly that former President Trump spearheaded an unprecedented campaign to coerce him to do it anyway, ultimately culminating in a dangerous threat to Mr. Pence's life on January 6th. These are the Select Committee's findings with respect to the pressure campaign against the Vice President. John Eastman admitted in advance of the 2020 election that Mike Pence could not lawfully refuse to count official electoral votes. But he nevertheless devised a meritless proposal that deployed a combination of bogus election fraud claims and the fake electoral ballots to say that Mike Pence, presiding over the joint session, could reject legitimate electoral votes for President-elect Biden. But still, President Trump accepted and repeated Eastman's theory and used it to pressure the vice president to take unlawful action. In multiple heated conversations, President Trump directly pressured Vice President Pence to adopt the Eastman theory and either reject the electors or send them back to the state legislatures. The vice president consistently resisted and repeatedly told the president that he did not possess the authority to do what President Trump directed. This culminated in an angry phone call on the morning of January 6th between President Trump and Vice President Pence, during which the former president repeatedly berated Mr. Pence by cursing and leveling threats. White House staffer Nick Luna was one of the many witnesses who heard the call as it happened. Take a listen at Mr. Luna's testimony.
Did you hear any part of the phone call, even if just the end that the president was speaking from?
I did, yes.
All right, and what'd you hear?
So as I was dropping off the note, I remember hearing the word wimp. Either he called him a wimp. I don't remember if he said, you are a wimp, you'll be a wimp. Wimp is the word I remember. Something to the effect, the wording's wrong. I made the wrong decision 4 or 5 years ago.
In the face of the vice president's resistance, the former president and others exerted both private and public pressure to change his mind. In his speech on the Ellipse on the afternoon of January 6th, former President Trump told the crowd that Vice President Pence needed the courage to do what he has to do. Once the riot began, President Trump deliberately chose to issue a tweet attacking Mr. Pence, knowing that the crowd had already grown violent. Almost immediately thereafter, the crowd around the Capitol surged, and between 2:30 and 2:35 p.m., the Metropolitan Police line on the west front of the Capitol broke. This was the first time in MPD history that a line like this had broken. Rioters at the Capitol were heard chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," through the afternoon. As a result of this unrest, Vice President Pence was forced to flee to a secure location where he actively coordinated with law enforcement and other governmental officials to address the ongoing violence. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Murphy, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ultimately, President Trump did not succeed in bending state and federal officials to his will. At every turn, state officials, the Department of Justice, Mike Pence, and many others stood up for the rule of law and resisted the president's wishes. In that way, our American institutions held after the 2020 election. But that did not stop President Trump. Instead, he turned to his supporters, those who believed his lies about a stolen election. He summoned a crowd to the nation's capital on January 6, hoping that they would pressure Congress to do what he could not do on his own. The Select Committee has made the following findings on this issue. 2 years ago today, in the early morning hours of December 19th, Donald Trump sent a tweet urging his supporters to travel to Washington for a protest on January 6. "Be there, we'll be wild," he tweeted. Between December 19th and January 6th, the president repeatedly encouraged his supporters to come to Washington. The president's December 19th tweet galvanized domestic violent extremists, including members of the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, and organized militia groups. These individuals began organizing to come to the Capitol in large numbers with the specific intent to use violence to disrupt the certification of the election during the joint session. Prior to January 6th, the FBI, Secret Service, U.S. Capitol Police, D.C. government, and other law enforcement agencies gathered substantial evidence suggesting the risk of violence at the Capitol during the joint session. These included warnings like the following. Their plan is to literally kill people. Please take this tip seriously and investigate further. President Trump supporters have proposed a movement to occupy Capitol Hill. Alert regarding the VP being a dead man walking if he doesn't do the right thing. I saw several other alerts saying they will storm the Capitol if he doesn't do the right thing. In the days leading up to January 6th, President Trump's advisors explicitly told him that he should encourage his supporters to be peaceful that day, but he refused. One witness, Hope Hicks, provided the committee with records of her text messages on January 6th. In one exchange with another staffer, he texted her, "Hey, I know you're seeing this, but he," referring to President Trump, "really should tweet something about being nonviolent." "I'm not there," Hicks replied. "I suggested it several times Monday and Tuesday, and he refused." When Ms. Hicks came in to provide testimony to the committee, we asked her about this exchange. Her explanation is that the "he" in this text wasn't the president, but rather it was Eric Hirschman. Take a listen to her testimony.
When you wrote, "I suggested it several times," and it presumably means that the president say something about being nonviolent. You wrote, "I suggested it several times Monday and Tuesday, and he refused." Tell us what happened.
Sure. I didn't speak to the president about this directly, but I communicated to people like Eric Hirschman that it was my view that it was important that the president put out some kind of message in advance of the event.
And what was Mr. Hirschman's response?
Mr. Hirschman said that he had made the same, recommendation directly to the president, and that he had refused.
Just so I understand, Mr. Hirschman said that he had already recommended to the president that the president convey a message that people should be peaceful on January 6th, and the president had refused to do that?
Yes.
The public will be able to review this in the transcripts and see the perspective Eric Hirschman gave before we took Hope Hicks's testimony. Despite having knowledge of the threats of violence presented by the crowd gathered on January 6th, President Trump gave an incendiary speech, declaring without basis that the election had been stolen and encouraging his supporters to fight like hell. And during the speech and immediately thereafter, President Trump stated his intention to travel to the Capitol with his supporters in an effort to influence the joint session. The Select Committee has developed evidence indicating that President Trump did, in fact, intend to go to the Capitol on the afternoon of January 6th, and that he repeatedly expressed that intention during the afternoon and in the days prior. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Virginia, Mrs. Luria, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All of President Trump's efforts came to a head on the afternoon of January 6th. Standing on the stage of the ellipse, President Trump told tens of thousands of angry supporters that the election was stolen, that they had the power to change that if they marched to the Capitol, and that they wouldn't have a country anymore if the presidency was taken away from him. He told them he would be there with them. And then, as the crowd descended on the Capitol, President Trump watched it on television. Despite pleas from his senior advisors, from lawmakers on the Hill, and from his own children, President Trump would not issue a public statement, instructing his supporters to disperse and leave the Capitol. Mr. Trump's failures spanned the period from 1:10 p.m., when his speech ended, and he instructed his supporters to march to the Capitol, to 4:17 p.m., when he finally, begrudgingly, told his supporters to go home. For 187 minutes, he actively disregarded his constitutional obligation to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. As we've established through months of investigation, that is because the mob wanted what President Trump wanted, to impede the peaceful transition of power. These are the Select Committee's findings about President Trump's dereliction of duty. From the outset of the violence, and for several hours that followed, people at the Capitol, people inside President Trump's administration, elected officials of both parties, members of President Trump's own family, and even Fox News commentators who were sympathetic to President Trump, all tried to contact the White House to urge him to do one singular thing, the one thing that all of these people immediately understood was required: instruct his supporters to leave the Capitol. The president repeatedly refused pleas as he watched the violence at the Capitol on television. During the day, the president never spoke with National Guard, the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, or any law enforcement agency. At no point during the day, or any other, did he issue any order to deploy any law enforcement agency to assist. Multiple witnesses, including President Trump's White House counsel, testified to these facts. Your White House employees, who had been speaking directly with President Trump, state that he didn't want anything done. The president was making phone calls that afternoon, but they weren't to law enforcement officials. Rather, President Trump continued to call his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Both President Trump and Mr. Giuliani spoke with congressional leaders, even after the violence had begun, to encourage them to continue delaying the session. Approximately 3 hours after being informed of the violence at the Capitol, hours during which, as our evidence has shown, Donald Trump sat in his dining room and watched the violence on television, the president released a video statement in which he again repeated that the election was stolen, told his supporters at the Capitol that he loved them, and ultimately suggested that they disperse. The statement had an immediate impact on elements of the crowd, many of whom have testified that it led them to depart the Capitol. At 6:01 p.m., President Trump sent his last tweet of the day. He did not condemn the violence. Instead, he attempted to justify it. These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away, he wrote. Remember this day forever. There's no doubt that President Trump thought that the actions of the rioters were justified. In the days after January 6th, he spoke to several different advisors. And in those conversations, he minimized the seriousness of the attack. Here is new testimony from another one of President Senior's advisors, Kellyanne Conway.
You said you talked to the president the next day. Tell us about that conversation on the 7th.
Yeah, I don't think it was very long. I just said that was just a terrible day. I'm working on a long statement. I said it's crazy.
What did he say?
No, these people are upset. They're very upset.
In the days following the attack, President Trump also expressed a desire to pardon those involved in the attack. Since then, he's suggested that he will do so if he returns to the Oval Office. In summary, President Trump lit the flame, he poured gasoline on the fire, and sat by in the White House dining room for hours watching the fire burn. And today, he still continues to fan those flames. That was his extreme dereliction of duty. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Raskin, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you for your extraordinary leadership of this committee. Generations to come will praise you and the Vice Chair for your unswerving devotion to the rule of law. Several months ago, you tasked several of our members in a subcommittee with bringing recommendations to the full committee about potential referrals to the Department of Justice and other authorities based on evidence of criminal and civil offenses that has come to our attention over the course of our investigation. We are now prepared to share those recommendations today. Mr. Chairman, let me begin with some relevant background considerations to our criminal referrals. The dangerous assault on American constitutional democracy that took place on January 6, 2021 consists of hundreds of individual criminal offenses. Most such crimes are already being prosecuted by the Department of Justice. We proposed to the committee advancing referrals where the gravity of the specific offense, the severity of its actual harm, and the centrality of the offender to the overall design of the unlawful scheme to overthrow the election compel us to speak. Ours is not a system of justice where foot soldiers go to jail and the masterminds and ringleaders get a free pass. Mr. Chairman, as you know, our committee had the opportunity last spring to present much of our evidence to a federal judge, something that distinguishes our investigation from any other congressional investigation I can recall. In the context of resolving evidentiary privilege issues related to the crime-fraud doctrine in the Eastman case, U.S. District Court Judge David Carter examined just a small subset of our evidence to determine whether it showed the likely commission of a federal offense. The judge concluded that both former President Donald Trump and John Eastman likely violated two federal criminal statutes. This is the starting point for our analysis today. The first criminal statute we invoke for referral, therefore, is Title 18, Section 1512C, which makes it unlawful for anyone to corruptly obstruct, influence, or impede any official proceeding of the United States government. We believe that the evidence described by my colleagues today and assembled throughout our hearings warrants a criminal referral of former President Donald J. Trump, John Eastman, and others for violations of this statute. The whole purpose and obvious effect of Trump's scheme were to obstruct, influence, and impede this official proceeding, the central moment for the lawful transfer of power in the United States. Second, we believe that there is more than sufficient evidence to refer former President Donald J. Trump, John Eastman, and others for violating Title 18, Section 371. This statute makes it a crime to conspire to defraud the United States. In other words, to make an agreement to impair, obstruct, or defeat the lawful functions of the United States government by deceitful or dishonest means. Former President Trump did not engage in a plan to defraud the United States acting alone. He entered into agreements, formal and informal, with several other individuals who assisted him with his criminal objectives. Our report describes in detail the actions of numerous co-conspirators who agreed with and participated in Trump's plan to impair, obstruct, and defeat the certification of President Biden's electoral victory. That said, the subcommittee does not attempt to determine all of the potential participants in this conspiracy, as our understanding of the role of many individuals may be incomplete even today because they refuse to answer our questions. We trust that the Department of Justice will be able to form a far more complete picture through its own investigation. Third, we make a referral based on Title 18, Section 1001, which makes it unlawful to knowingly and willfully make materially false statements to the federal government. The evidence clearly suggests that President Trump conspired with others to submit slates of fake electors to Congress and the National Archives. We believe that this evidence we set forth in our report is more than sufficient for a criminal referral of former President Donald J. Trump and others in connection with this offense. As before, we don't try to determine all of the participants in this conspiracy, many of whom refuse to answer our questions while under oath. We trust that the Department of Justice will be able to form a more complete picture through its own investigation. The fourth and final statute we invoke for referral is Title 18, Section 2383. The statute applies to anyone who incites, assists, or engages in insurrection against the United States of America, and anyone who gives aid or comfort to an insurrection. An insurrection is a rebellion against the authority of the United States. It is a grave federal offense anchored in the Constitution itself, which repeatedly opposes insurrections and domestic violence, and indeed uses participation in insurrection by office holders as automatic grounds for disqualification from ever holding public office again at the federal or state level. Anyone who incites others to engage in rebelling, assists them in doing so, or gives aid and comfort to those engaged in insurrection is guilty of a federal crime. The committee believes that more than sufficient evidence exists for a criminal referral of former President Trump for assisting or aiding and comforting those at the Capitol who engaged in a violent attack on the United States. The committee has developed significant evidence that President Trump intended to disrupt the peaceful transition of power under our Constitution. The president has an affirmative and primary constitutional duty to act to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Nothing could be a greater betrayal of this duty than to assist in insurrection against the constitutional order. The complete factual basis for this referral is set forth in detail throughout our report. These are not the only statutes that are potentially relevant to President Trump's conduct related to the 2020 election. Depending on evidence developed by the Department of Justice, the president's actions could certainly trigger other criminal violations. Nor are President Trump and his immediate team the only people identified for referrals in our report. As part of our investigation, we asked multiple members of Congress to speak with us about issues critical to our understanding of this attack on the 2020 election and our system of constitutional democracy. None agreed to provide that essential information. As a result, we took the significant step of issuing them subpoenas based on the volume of information particular members possessed about one or more parts of President Trump's plans to overturn the election. None of the subpoenaed members complied, and we are now referring 4 members of Congress for appropriate sanction by the House Ethics Committee for failure to comply with lawful subpoenas. Mr. Chairman, we understand the gravity of each and every referral we are making today, just as we understand the magnitude of the crime against democracy that we describe in our report. But we have gone where the facts and the law lead us, and inescapably, they lead us here. Accordingly, Mr. Chairman, in light of these facts, I ask unanimous consent that the chairman be directed to transmit to the United States Department of Justice relevant Select Committee records in furtherance of these criminal referrals.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Pursuant to notice I now call up Select Committee's final report pursuant to Section 4A of House Resolution 503. The clerk shall designate the report.
Final report of the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol.
Without objection, the report will be considered read and open to amendment at this point. I now recognize the gentlewoman from Virginia, Ms. Luria, for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee favorably report to the House the Select Committee's final report, which includes the committee's legislative recommendations and criminal referrals of Donald J. Trump and others, pursuant to Section 4A of House Resolution 503.
The question is on the motion to favorably report to the House. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I request a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Cheney?
Aye.
Ms. Cheney, aye. Ms. Lofgren?
Aye.
Ms. Lofgren, aye. Mr. Schiff?
Aye.
Mr. Schiff, aye. Mr. Aguilar?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar, aye. Mrs. Murphy?
Aye.
Mrs. Murphy, aye. Mr. Raskin?
Aye.
Mr. Raskin, aye. Mrs. Luria?
Aye.
Mrs. Luria, aye. Mr. Kinzinger?
Kinzinger, aye.
Mr. Kinzinger, aye.
How is the chair recorded?
Mr. Chairman, you are not recorded.
Chair votes aye.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
The clerk will report the vote.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, there are 9 ayes and 0 noes.
The motion is agreed to. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, staff is authorized to make any necessary technical or conforming changes to the report to reflect the actions of the committee. The chair requests those in the hearing room remain seated until the Capitol Police have escorted members from the room. There being no further business, without objection, the Select Committee stands adjourned.
It's over already?
Yes, Jeffrey. What I'd like to do is suggest we all just take a moment. We've been sitting here listening to this to kind of absorb it. If you need to get up and grab a cup of coffee or use the restroom real quick, why don't you go ahead and do that? And we'll just start again in about 2 minutes. It's quite a bit to take in. So I'm not going anywhere, but wanted to give you an opportunity to take a quick break if you need one. Can you hear me okay, Joe? All right.
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Maybe we should do this exercise again and say, now that we've heard this today, how do you feel about it now? And if you wouldn't mind dropping that into the chat. Wow is what Brittany says, and that's kind of my go-to comment is, wow. This is a really somber moment in our country's history. While I am thankful that they are forwarding criminal referrals as indicated, at the same time, I'm glad they're doing that, but I'm not ecstatic or happy or jumping up and down at the results of this, because it means that something really awful happened. And there are people, and we know who is responsible. And those folks, this committee has made every effort to hold them accountable. I'll be eager to see what their recommendations are for legislation. Very proud of our government. Yeah, Brett, I agree. This is how government is supposed to work. And I did drop in the chat that one of the things that we really need to be doing now is, as the Republicans take over the House, we need to point out the sharp contrast between these public hearings and the manner in which they were conducted and the information was presented to the public versus what we know is going to happen in the Republican House committees, because we saw it. 9 investigations over Hillary Clinton's emails that were nothing. The amount of money and time and energy wasted was purely a political show. This was not. This was very important, and yet there's still information we don't know, and I'll be eager to read the report as soon as I can get it. How will the Republican majority alter the proceedings going forward? I'm not sure what your question is, so I'll try to answer what I think it is, and then you can let me know if I got it right, Doug. The Republicans, all indications are they're going to have tons of investigations, some of them being very provided as a way of Kevin McCarthy getting a vote to be Speaker of the House. He's promised to let them kind of run wild. Marjorie Taylor Greene has gotten, apparently herself, she's going to be assigned, if he's House Speaker, and the committee chair, Mr. Comer, I believe it is, on the House Oversight Committee. I believe that's, he said that he will allow Marjorie Taylor Greene to be on his committee. They've spoken about investigating and impeaching the Attorney General, investigating and impeaching the President, investigating and impeaching a number of other cabinet members that they don't feel have done their jobs right. This is all about, their actions are going to be all about political revenge. I think it's transparent to most people that that's not what this committee was about. This committee was not about political revenge. This committee was about finding out what happens. And we as Americans are demanding that we know what happens. And there's still more information to get. And on that note, before I move on from that question, we need to be contacting our senators and telling them, now that the House has completed this report, we need the Senate to pick up and continue the investigation. And we need them to investigate the members of the Sedition Caucus, every single representative and senator who voted to overturn the will of the voters on January 6th, 2021. Oh, here, let me turn my camera back on. The work, there's more work that can be done, and I think that that's something that that the Senate really needs to do. I don't know what impact having Kristen Sinema pull her thing about becoming an independent, if that's going to have any kind of sway over what happens in the Senate. It shouldn't over committee assignments or committee work, I don't think, but we still have more we need to know. And so we're not done. And that work can be done in the Senate. And that's the next place that needs to be worked. Hey, Doug, would you mind coming off mute for a second and letting me know if I answered your question, or if you could clarify it a little for me?
No, I think that's very helpful. I do appreciate you being so clear on that. And moving to the Senate makes a big difference, I guess, because we do hold the majority. So thank you for the time.
Oh, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. Jeffrey.
Oh, me?
Can you unmute, Jeffrey?
Yeah,
There you
sorry.
go.
Got to, I did suggest David David Newman suggested something. David, are you available?
What are you going to ask me about, Jeffrey?
Well, I was going to say what the recommendations for criminal charges against. Yeah, he asked for a recommendation for criminal charges against certain people. Well, if he's not available, I'll just speak it out for him. The Juliana Eastman, Bannon, Roger Stone, Mike Pompeo, etc. But I suggested added a few. But I suggested added a few more. If you want to open the website, you can. Hang on, I'm gonna post it in the chat. But in the meantime, let me mention about an idea I have that that video game idea. Did I tell you about that?
No.
It's a special Roblox game. It's supposed to be educational, fun, and political. It's supposed to get know who the enemies of democracy are and who's on the right side of democracy. The main objective is to race from the rural area to the ballot box and cast your vote, while avoiding those who want to stop you from voting.
Interesting. Sounds like an interesting video game for sure.
Hang on, I'm gonna.
We have 147. It is Republicans between the House and the Senate who voted against confirmation of the votes cast by voters. I still find myself at times stunned by the fact that that they thought that this was a good idea. But then again, I don't know if you think back. I remember this really clearly that that Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley were in this fight with each other over who was going to be the main architect of this, who was going to be the leader of this in the Senate. They were trying to one-up each other, and each one of them gained credit for doing this. Well, now, of course, they don't want any credit, and it's everybody else's fault. But yeah, I think we can think of a lot of other people to be named for crimes. We have seen the last couple of weeks where more of the insurrectionists have been sentenced to jail for periods of time. I think the last one I saw was 4 years. Yeah, that's way better than 4 hours. Also, there's a new Proud Boys trial that's starting now. I believe it's 5 Proud Boys who are on trial, and those charges include the sedition, a conspiracy to overthrow the government. And it was kind of a risk for the Department of Justice to file those charges against the oath keepers, because the government hasn't had a really good record of getting convictions on that charge, on seditious conspiracy. But in this case, 2 of the 5 were found guilty of it. And there's so much evidence that I don't know how they couldn't otherwise. On a side note, before I take Brittany's comment, on a side note, there is Rachel Maddow's podcast. If you have not heard it yet, it's called Ultra. I'll drop that in the chat. Ultra is the true story of a seditious conspiracy occurring in the United States in the late 30s, early 40s, around World War II. And I highly recommend that you listen to it. There's many parallels to what's going on in this case. Some of the actions and one of the features in that podcast is that there was a minister. His last name was Cawthorn, may have been a Catholic priest. I don't recall for sure, but he had the largest radio show in the entire country at that time, and he was very much pro-Nazi, pro-Hitler, and broadcasting that to anybody and everybody who'd listen. And that's one more interesting note is the Catholic priest who has been leading the charge on behalf of Donald Trump with all Catholics, or at least he's trying to lead the charge with all Catholics for Trump. He was just defrocked. and it was permanent, lifetime. He can't ever appeal it because he was so outside of the norms of decency, and apparently didn't pay attention when his boss kept telling him to stop. So eventually now he's defrocked and he can't go back. Can't say that that hurts my feelings at all. Brittany, your hand's up.
Can you explain that again real quick before you go to Brittany? Because I didn't understand about the, you know,
About
what you just said.
the priest?
Yeah.
The priest who runs the Catholics for Trump and some other offshoots of that, he was just defrocked because he was behaving in a very partisan and perverse manner, according to the Vatican, and that he had been told to stop many times, and he chose not to. So he's done. Brittany, go ahead.
That means he's fired, right?
Yes, it does, Jeffrey. He's definitely fired.
Okay, so basically, man, I'm enjoying the hearings today, and what I like about is I like the interviews from all the Trump supporters and with the former officers.
Mhm.
They basically that and to me, Donald Trump was surrounded the mobs after all that happens during the insurrection.
He incited the mob, and then this weekend he went on to his social and he repeated it all again, as if he's not in enough trouble.
Right.
He's trying to incite everyone now against the FBI and the DOJ and law enforcement. And, you know, for somebody who says that they back the blue, he sure has a funny way of showing it. That was my sarcastic way of saying it doesn't exist. But anyway, thank you, Brittany. David, I'm sorry, Brittany.
I'm sorry. And I think that that conclusion for the hearing, I'm glad that they voted.
Yeah. And it was nice that they took the voice vote, then they took the roll call, and that Americans can see it was unanimous. So thank you, Brittany. David, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I was going to put it in the chat and writing it out. So
videos like that.
Okay.
Notification.
That's okay too.
So
That's what you want to do.
It's a matter of record.
Yes. Turn on
Yeah.
notifications.
Matthew wrote, I appreciate them pointing attention to him defrauding his donors, hoping some of them will take notice that he happily takes advantage of them too. And of course, what do we have? The latest grift was his NFTs, his cards, his digital things, which turn out to be apparently most of them stolen from other sources whose permission he didn't get. And the price went way up after they sold out, and then it dropped by at least half. But whatever it is, it appears that it was $4.5 million into Donald Trump's pocket, because that's exactly where it's going. I can tell you that my son, who's in his 30s, staying here with us while he's recovering from injuries, he said that he was part of a conversation with a group that said they thought that maybe, excuse me, maybe these digital cards were a way of having all of the Trump corporations that now are forbidden from moving their assets around because of the lawsuits that are going on, that maybe this was a way of his corporations channeling all the money into that, which means it goes into Trump's pocket and out of the corporations. I at first I thought that was maybe a little bit far-fetched, but then again, I realized who we were talking about and thought, I don't know, but I'll be watching and listening to see if we get any clues about that. Cheryl, welcome. Can you unmute? Oh, she's in the car, but you're muted, Cheryl, so we can't hear you.
Hi there. Sorry
Hi.
about that.
That's okay.
I haven't seen the hearing. I recorded it. I'm doing physical therapy that I put off because I worked so much with you with Field Team 6 and locally in Georgia. So I look forward to seeing that. I put a question in the chat, but I'm sure that did they say anything about other people that would ever have the possibility again about with this 14th Amendment and getting rid of people in Congress who participated in this insurrection, particularly this Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
I know. She's beyond the pale.
I don't live in her district. That woman scares me to death. I campaigned a lot for her opponent. And
thank you.
What's to be done with people like her? Not only her, but I believe the lieutenant governor here who was going to be one of the phony electors.
You're talking about Georgia?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, you have a very active grassroots movement in your state, and I'm going to guess that you're hooked up with a bunch of them. Thank you so much for all the work you did on the campaign. As far as Marjorie Taylor Greene goes, what I had said earlier was that I heard someone saying that that rather than referring the members of Congress to the DOJ for criminal charges, because as soon as the Republicans take over the House, they could withdraw those recommendations, that there was potentially referrals to the Ethics Committee, and the Ethics Committee could deem whether or not they committed violations of their oath and the ethical code, and then go from there. I know that there is a bill in the House that's been suggested that would keep Trump from running for president again. There's a number of democracy bills that are going to expire. Their life will expire at the end of this year, and they'll have to be reintroduced into the next Congress.
Oh dear.
But that's something that we have to start working on full steam ahead again, is getting the Freedom to Vote Act passed, and getting some more controls on our elections, and stop all of the fixing of the game, so to speak, the gerrymandering, to the point where these people don't end up with any competition, and they can just hold office forever and never, ever do anything that their constituents want them to do. I mean, I kind of find that appalling, and I think as a constituent, I'd find it really appalling. Thank goodness that's not my case, but yeah. Ethics is 50-50, and Matthew, who's your congresswoman that's going to be the new chair of that committee? Susan Wild. I'll have to learn more about her from you. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I suspect that they have decent, like centrist Republicans, that they would reach, that committee could easily reach a conclusion that they violated the ethics that those representatives did. And she's, of course, the most loud, brash, her and what's her name, Boebert. Lauren Boebert.
Yeah, but she wants to be on the ethics committee.
I'm sure she does, because if you get on the ethics committee when you're unethical, then you can just get away with being unethical, right?
Oh my God, this is so depressing. That's what I'm saying.
Well, don't let it depress you. We have actions we can take, and that's what we need to do. Action is the antidote for all of this, and that means, calling, like I said, calling our senators and asking them to continue the January 6th investigations, especially into the members of both houses that were complicit in this and participated in it. And there's more. I won't go into all of it, but I think you get my gist. We need to just keep taking action and keep our spirits up enough to know that if we put in enough hard work, we can succeed. I mean, look what we did in this election. That was supposed to be a big, huge wipeout, right? And it was not. We have the issue of now having a Republican House, but fortunately, at least our confirmations will be still getting through in the Senate. David.
Oh, yes, I just wanted to comment that I put my comment about the upcoming session of Congress and in the chat. And so it's a question for you. So if you...
I'm looking at it now. Let me see here. Whoops.
It's got two parts to it. So it's a...
Says, do you think significant number of Republicans who care about their constituents can be shaken loose from block partisan voting on specific issues, especially on climate and health issues, so the federal government can actually get things done? I would suspect on those two issues, the answer is no, because they want to repeal already. They want to get rid of Medicare being able to negotiate for drug prices. They want to get rid, they still want to get rid of the ACA, the American Health Care Plan, the Obama bill. And, you know, as far as the environment goes, they want to roll back any of the green stuff that was contained in the the Inflation Reduction Act and in the infrastructure bill. And then, can they be persuaded to establish a federal bank with power to disperse public money in a more fiscally responsible way than wasteful congressional pork barrel spending? Well, one of the things they can do, and there has been a bill this session, again, it will go away at the end of this Congress. It's the National Infrastructure Bank. And that bill number, there is the NIB. NIB.org, I think it is. I'll look it up and make sure I have that right. But the National Infrastructure Bank bill would actually not cost the taxpayers. It wouldn't be subject to approval by Congress every year and require funding because it would be self-perpetuating. So that has been introduced in a prior Congress, and it will be reintroduced again. They've been doing a lot of out and about and online advocacy, a lot of events to talk about that. Basically, the way a national infrastructure bank works, or this one would, is the money would be, the seed money would be from treasury bills in exchange for stock. In any event, you can read a lot more on their website, but that money would come in. And where the National Infrastructure Bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, only provided enough money for 10% of the infrastructure needs in our country, this bill would provide the other 90%. Also, it has provisions in it so that as they would loan money to local and state governments, agencies, or entities, and when that money was loaned out and it's being paid back, any profits that they made would be going back into the bank. Also, there would be money set aside so that rural communities who can't afford loans would be able to get grants to work on some of their infrastructure needs. And this is to make sure that no matter where you live, whether it's in the middle of a big city or out on a farm and miles and miles and miles to anybody else near you, that still infrastructure improvements would be made. We know that transportation is a big part of that. For those of us on the West Coast, one of the things that would be included in this for funding would be the high-speed rail from Vancouver, BC, all the way to San Diego, California. And that corridor is something that is badly needed on the West Coast and elsewhere as well. But it's not taxpayer money. that's going into that. It's really a win-win. We've had 4 prior national infrastructure banks before. Each one of those was for a defined period of time with sunset clauses. The National Infrastructure Bank bill does not have a sunset date. It would become a permanent bank. And part of the problem with our infrastructure, especially for those of us who are older and able to remember, is that they would pass one of these, they'd get all this infrastructure built, and then over 50 years, it decays and it degrades and it's not taken care of properly because people don't have the money. And then we find ourselves in a position of having to spend even more in order to just get back to where we were, let alone to advance. So it would allow for creative solutions and green solutions. It would produce jobs that are paid at the federal in accordance with the something Bacon Act. I'm really having memory lapses here this morning, but in any event, it's where union employees get paid livable wages, and it's a win-win. It's a win-win for everybody. But we're going to have to build up some additional Davis-Bacon. Thank you, Doug. Thank you. We're going to have to work on that as well. And I'll be happy to let you know. I think you've been to some of those NIB meetings, haven't you, David?
I've been to 1 or 2 of them, yes. I put, as I said, more effort into the climate area and meeting with some congressional people together with 350 Seattle and other groups.
Yeah.
And I was very heartened by a recent video, which will not be put back on the air for some time. I was hoping they'd put it on YouTube, but instead it was somehow there was must have been some private money involved and some copyright. But it was led by Al Gore and U.S. Secretary Vilsack. Both appeared.
Oh, wow.
They both appeared to be on the same page, which was, I thought that was amazing and wonderful.
It is. It is.
A lot of pressures on the next farm bill.
Yeah.
Keep it, business as usual.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it.
If you go to the NIB website, they have a lot of their meetings are recorded on there. They also have other bits and pieces that talk about the history and then also all of the information that's gone into creating this bill. But thank you, David, for that question. That's an important part of moving forward, that's for sure. Jeffrey.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, I shared you the link. Can you click on it? Can you click on it first out? That's what I wanted you to look at right now.
I'm not going to look at the link right now.
Well, I wanted you to share the screen of it with everyone.
Okay, well, everybody has the link, and I will drop it back in again.
It's because I wanted to know after Trump who should be next to be prosecuted.
Well, hopefully they're going to do it in a bunch rather than just one-offing, but probably one-offing. I don't know who will be next. Giuliani, the DC bar, the recommended that he be disbarred, defrocking and disbarred. Sorry, getting that first couple letters and the word mixed up here. And so, I don't know what is going to happen with him. I know that they've already said that there won't be any charges against Giuliani for the stuff he was pulling in Ukraine during the election in trying to get the government to open a false investigation into the Bidens. But I don't know who's going to be next. And, it's probably something that you could develop. What did they used to call those pools? Betting pools, where you have a chart and then it says, when and who is going to get in what order. You could probably do that with your friends, but I don't know. It's not really something I've thought about at great length as to what order they should be charged in. I just want them charged. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Well, how about this? Sorry, how about this? Should Marjorie Green Taylor be next?
Well, Marjorie Green Taylor should be a lot of things, and I'm sure that there is a focus on her for sure. And so we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Thank you for that. Alpina, hi. Where'd you go?
Hi, everyone.
There you are.
I'm just breathing a little bit more after all this decision. And we were 4 years under this administration.
Yeah.
And we are still alive. That's a blessing, I would say, Well, let's come to the point. Representative, as we saw, Representative Elaine Loria, she just clearly said that there will be no country if he is not winning. That looks like a authoritarian, and as Stephen always says, that it's going to be, the administration is going to be more dictatorship. Is that kind of wish that make him do all this hell, but never realize that he was disobeying the Constitution or not protecting the democracy? That is so strange for an office holder. Well, and this line I want to repeat again, that what she said, testimony here, the President Trump wanted it to happen. This identifies the unfaithfulness of his duties with the Constitution or protecting the democracy. Let the violence continue up till 3 hours. My goodness, he loved them. How can he be in this country and be in the politics? This subpoena which has been issued, which is going to be issued, and he will have to question, probably like other time also he was issued a subpoena. And I was discussing when we were talking with Pramila Jayapal, she was telling that somehow nobody gave a light to let him answer that. It was gone. Nobody could take an action. This was the second time that they've pushed. And now the committee was organized and everything happened, so we can see everything now. The truth came out. So probably again, I would say, I shouldn't say that, but I'm thinking somehow everything is possible through money. But now people are open, they can see and they can realize that we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't even support this kind of activity. Maybe truth will come out and they will get the punishment or whatever they decide. But it is all in the air now. The work is not been done as yet. I would say that let's protect our democracy. Let's get into the work and find a solution from our power perspective. Like, we don't have the power, like we can only hear that and let them do their work. But we also have, as a citizen, as a public citizen, we have some boundaries that we can object and we can ask the question from them, what they are doing. But it is in the Senate, and Senate is going to be ours. The House is theirs. The House has done their part. Now it is going to be in the Senate, and let's see what happens. At the end, under the section 18, Title 18, Section 2383, this is an offense, federal offense by the office holders. And also, according to the Title 18, Section 371, obstruction of an official proceeding, he has break both of them. So he's entitled for subpoena and has to answer what are his circumstances and defense point. I don't think there is any. And that category, section 4A, the final report has given us, there should be some kind of, punishment, some kind of, otherwise everyone in this country is going to do that. If this kind of offenses are not been justified, it has to be justified. That's my appeal.
Yeah.
Everyone,
It's-
yes, it
Yeah,
has.
we don't want it to happen again. That's the bottom line, right?
Yeah, nobody should break the law and be in the office.
And we want our votes to count.
Yes,
That is what they're there for.
Our vote and our desires, what the people want, they should be respected in this country.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Thanks, Alpina.
Thank you.
Rebecca, can you unmute? Rebecca? You just turned your camera off, but you haven't turned on your mic yet. Okay, your camera's back on. It's a little microphone. If you can click on it to unmute yourself.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, there you go.
I'm sorry, I lost the Zoom connection there for a minute.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was just, I thought what I heard them say was that instead of referring criminal charges to the DOJ, they were going to refer it to Congress. And that concerns me because what if Congress then doesn't refer him to the DOJ or doesn't level criminal charges?
Yeah, I think we'll know more when we see the written report, exactly what all of this means. Or probably in reporting before the report comes out. But Jack Smith is going to be getting all of this. You can rest assured of that. And
yeah,
he's moving very quickly. He's moving full steam ahead. I think it's we still have to understand that Merrick Garland took control of the DOJ. This happened even before he was sworn into office. And this has been the largest investigation in our country's history. More people, more crimes, more evidence than ever before. And so I think we'll see. They will be, when he says that, I think what he said was when they said they were going to be referring it to Congress, they were talking about their legislative proposals that they are making. And I'm eager to see those as well. Tomorrow in our Tuesday morning meeting, we're going to talk a little bit about what the recommendations of the first House Homeland Security Committee report on January 6th, what those recommendations were and what's been accomplished and what hasn't and why it hasn't. And then we'll be, again, on January 6th, we'll be discussing, excuse me, the report. So anyway, I thank you for sharing your concerns about that. So Jeffrey, I'm going to give you about 20 seconds, okay? Go ahead, Jeffrey.
All right, you remember that democracy bill's dying thing?
Yeah.
I had one idea for a bill that'll never die. In fact, it's called Democracide, or Crimes Against Democracy. Yeah, did I ever tell you about that one?
Yeah, you did. But I think what we need, if we want something to be permanent, we need to make changes to our Constitution, which is kind of an interesting thing because most countries with constitutions ultimately change their constitutions to keep up with the times every 20 years. Mm-hmm. Instead, we're stuck with justices who claim originalism, which is not a legal, not a valid legal theory. And we see what's happening now in Texas this week. In Texas, a court decided that no longer could the law stand in Texas that prohibits people guilty of abuse, domestic abuse. The law that prohibited them from purchasing weapons was unconstitutional based on a Supreme Court decision last summer that said you have to get into the minds of the founders of our country and what was going on then. Well, women didn't have rights when that happened, and and we do, and we're entitled to them. And so, you know, that whole argument, and they're going to use that with, you know, they pled that case in the recent court hearing in the Supreme Court on the unitary legislature boondoggle that was the basis of Trump's all of his actions that got kiboshed. So there's, you know, we need to wait and see what happens with that. But also, we just have a lot of work to do, and we have to keep pushing. They count the number of calls they get on something. And that's why I say, again, I'll say it again, you can't get in trouble for calling your US Senator or US Representative's office every week, every day. If you get tired of that, look them up online and call, you know, rotate through the days to a different office that they have. Contacted their field offices. Get on a first name basis with their staff who answer the phone. They'll recognize you after a while, and you know, things will go smoothly. So just be sure that you're contacting everyone. I really appreciate everybody being here. Unless there's any other pressing issues, I'm going to call it time. We're at 12 o'clock. It was something I'm going to be spending a lot of time thinking about.
I got one.
I said, Jeffrey, what?
Ron DeSantis might be the, you know, next person for president, to run for president, but we can't let him be the next president, especially what he's done in Florida.
Yeah,
Let me point it out.
And the fact that he's, I don't understand the voters in his state who are a huge population of senior citizens, where the Republicans have made it very clear they want to get rid of Social Security and Medicaid, Medicare. You can't have people paying into a system for their whole entire life and then just tell them, tough, I want to give these corporations some additional money over here. So you're just going to have to do without. So we'll have a lot of work. I'll send out information on our January 6th discussions.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Can you send the Zoom links?
And I'll send out the link to that following this meeting. So thank you very much, everybody. I hope you have a really great week. We'll see you again soon.
I meant for the one for tomorrow, and you know, the other one too.
Yes, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Hi, Caroline. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Carolyn.
Thank you, Joe, for being my co-host. Appreciate that.
Well, you're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Joe.
Bye, Joe.
Bye.
See you tomorrow, or not, depending.
Okay.
On the time of the meeting.
All right. I'm trying to think. There it is. Okay.
Oh wait, it's that Cup of Joe thing, right? Tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah, I won't be able to attend that one. Sorry.
Okay. All right. We'll miss you.
Just.
Okay.
I was gonna say, just make sure I get a copy of the slideshow, okay?
There was no slideshow. We watched the hearing.
No, I mean tomorrow. If you do it.
Okay. I hear what you're saying now. And Tangle, nope, she left. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording. Yes.
Recording stopped.
And
if you ever need me, just call, okay?
Sure. If I need you, I'll give you a call.
Hmm.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye. Well, that was good. There's one. Got a little time, so let's see about this one. If it's still going, that is. Or if it's already over. It is still going on, I believe. If I don't get that in soon, well, we'll have to call it. Alrighty. Now I'm going to be honest with you. Did you think that the meeting was going to be long or short? Let me know in the live chat box or in the comments section down below. Alright, we're going to be waiting, okay? So, stand by. We're gonna wait we're gonna wait till 1 o'clock. After that, I have to call it. I have to end the meeting. If nothing happens between now and then, it's over. Alrighty? So use this time to, how do you say, get ready for.
One number. Yeah, that's what I'm familiar with the area. I miss it a lot sometimes. Anyway,
That's interesting.
yeah,
That's
of course,
interesting.
that would be
I'm
nice.
sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's interesting what you say about Fox News being more. Maybe am I misunderstanding Hispanic friendly as far as communication than maybe
Yes.
MSNBC
No,
and
I'm not saying it's
CNN?
Spanish. I'm saying not only Spanish, international.
International. It's interesting to know
International.
that. I
Oh
didn't
yeah,
know that.
yeah. Yeah, the best programming in Spanish in France, as well as in more sophisticated you know, programming of any kind. I'm talking about I mean shows of any type in the Spanish media that goes all throughout the Spanish speaking because you know there are people that speak Spanish in France. I mean, and in Japan, and you know they go into are the best programs that in Fox. They have Fox, you know, so they change immediately Fox News, you know, because they have Fox News in. I have a choice of going local Fox News, not just anywhere. So they give local news. So anyway, yeah, you won't think of CNN, but actually they have the counter with Fox News. Yeah, you know, I actually didn't do more than by chance find out. I mean, I really didn't pursue or investigate or do anything. I just, you know, my mom is prefers this at her age now, much older, is preferred. Going back, it's like they go back in their memories so to the Spanish speaking media, and so they are everywhere in Latin America. Yeah, and like I said, I found out by chance. Yeah, I was surprised myself. They lure you to that. They don't do that much in English, but if you see the program in all the Fox channels, even they are very minority oriented. And unless they have, and they show, oh, we're very thankful to Fox because they have allowed us very unique, very set up, and, you know, very unique programming. Except that you get the news, there it goes again. But they really focus on minorities, pockets, and then they you know enough because the way that our system is set up, the minorities have a lot of power, and I like that. But in many times, they when that's what happened with Trump. He was elected. Even though he didn't have the majority of votes, so they really know how to work the system that way. But in terms of numbers, we win. So I don't think the numbers is the problem. We already have enough Democrats. Is that even if there are enough, that's why to me one of the key issues beyond even all the three that I talked to you about is voting rights. And voting rights is something that now the Republicans, since Trump, they have been focused on because they know that they are smart. You see, they really hit where it will hurt the Democrats, and that's where we need to focus, as opposed to on a one-to-one. I mean, you know, if you want to, of course, that's your choice, but if you really want to make your time efficient, focus on big issues, and one is voting rights, that's for sure. And they are doing.
That's absolutely right. You're absolutely right on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, hopefully it has been helpful. But anyway, and nice talking to you. And I'll yeah, give you a call sometime. Or and is it a cell so that I can text you, or it's just a regular number?
Oh yeah, that's text and phone number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Fantastic. Fantastic.
I
Then
just
I'll send
enjoyed
you.
listening. I learned a lot. I had no idea because for me, you know, I mean, I just I go wondering why there's some communication, but they say that our ground game in Florida was just not as good as it maybe it was in other states. But I think we
Well,
need to lure the. No, anyway, go ahead, let me know what you
no.
think.
We didn't have it here in Florida. The people were saying,
Yeah.
at least among Democrats. I'm not. I didn't vote here. So, but they say that it was. We didn't have a good candidate. He was just too fairly said. I mean, well, yeah, you know, we need something. Someone with a little bit of charisma, a little bit of you know. Unfortunately, good or bad, he does have charisma.
Oh, you
Teach
mean
has
Marco
charisma.
Rubio?
So,
Yeah, he's very charismatic. He was about to resign a
yeah,
few
well,
years ago.
no,
Remember that? He got into that argument
yes,
with Trump about the size of his hands. He was about to resign.
yes.
I was hoping he would resign.
I know, no, yeah, no. It's just playing games. Well, but anyway, so it is true that many people think that yeah.
I have to go, so I just would
Okay,
like
I'm
to.
so
Of
sorry. I
course.
apologize.
No. I have to go too. I really
Okay,
have to
yeah.
go as well.
Thanks, everyone. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Likewise. Thank you.
I
Nice meeting you.
appreciate her
You're
insights
welcome.
about Fox and the Spanish-speaking community. I had no idea about that.
Yeah,
And
it's very sneaky. It's sneaky. It's the word like Trump is. It has been, and it still is sneaky.
here in my area, you know, I don't think it's so much trying to convince somebody, but just listening. When I was out knocking on doors, there were people
That's
who
true.
did not agree with me. And one man in particular, you know, I must have spent 10 minutes and he just wanted somebody to listen to him, you know,
That's
and he
true.
didn't like the Democrats and this, you know, but and then he apologized to me and I said, no, don't apologize. Your views are just as important as anybody else's views. And I think a lot of people just want to be heard.
Did that change him? Were you able to convince him? I mean, are these people like malleable?
No, I'm sure I didn't convince him at all. I did add, you know, a few facts, and you know, he was upset mainly about inflation, you know. But no, I'm sure I didn't convince him. But I don't think our aim should be changing minds specifically, but just giving people a chance to talk. And I think if they realize that Democrats are not the enemy, we're reasonable people who just want to come together for solutions. And,
Exactly.
you know, and it's just going to be slow, but we got to start now. You know, we really,
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Of course, yeah.
August of 2024, and I go, so, and listening to people, and I'm also an election observer here in Pierce County.
Thank you so much.
And we had one Republican, one Democrat,
Yes,
one
definitely.
And a couple of
Thank
times
you.
I would talk to Republican, you know, usually about the weather or, you know, dogs or whatever. And they'd say, oh, you're really nice. I mean, you know, as if I was some vile, hostile person. But no, we're all people. And I think if we show, you know, Republicans and, you know, our relatives that we are reasonable, kind people, that maybe, you know, all this hatred and extremism is wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, sometimes the work that we need to do is one-to-one. That's right. I just get tired of that. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I need to leave. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
And Wendy, I
You're
also
welcome.
put my number in the chat if you want to continue conversation.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
great.
would love
Thank you.
that. Yeah,
Okay.
I will take it down. Yeah. And just one more, I was afraid people would trade democracy for cheap gas. And I was quite gratified that people did not, that they really knew democracy was on the line.
I remember when I was campaigning for President Obama for his first term before the Affordable Care Act, I lived when I was active duty, I lived in Arizona, Nevada. So when I was off duty, I would go to some Republican pockets like Henderson, Nevada. And I went to women, to the House of Women that never had a mammogram. And I said to this Republican female, I said, ma'am, don't you want to have a mammogram without having to pay for it? Isn't that important to you? Well, you know, I don't have insurance, but I don't need it. I said, well, if you had the Affordable Care Act, when you're before the age of Medicare, you'll be able to get that. Don't you think that's important? And that changed her mind. I think people,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
4? No way.
Anyway,
Nice.
for all of your help and stay
people
strong,
forget that
everybody.
Medicare and Social Security and Medicaid are Democrat ideals. And I doubt that any of the Republicans would give away their
What's the
Medicare,
next
Medi-Cal,
step now?
and Social Security.
Oh,
if they were
to
given a choice.
implement it.
Well, they have to have their own investigation of the criminal cases that they think they can win.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. How you doing? Okay, how are you? I'm doing well. Good. Anyways, that's great. Good news. I'm happy now.
Hi everyone. We're leaving now. I'm gonna end this meeting now, and I'll email to you the tape if you missed it on my Zoom and YouTube channels.
Wow.
Thank you so much for
I
everything.
just
Thank you
hope
for
that something
tolerating
comes out of this.
my
You know, you
long
like go out
speeches.
so easily. Like, come on.
Thank you,
You're
everyone. You have a
excellent,
wonderful day, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Happy holidays, gracias, and have a nice day.
Well, that's it. The meeting's over. It's over. The Zoom meeting is over. I mean that. That's it. Well, that's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. The live stream's over. I meant to say. Sorry. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it, and hopefully one day, and hopefully Trump will be behind bars along with his other sympathizers and conspirators, and supporters, conspirators, sympathizers, all that. Anyway, thanks. Thank you for watching this live stream. Now, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and leave a comment down below, or in the live chat box before this live stream ends. And if you could share this video with as many people as you can, that'd be great. I would greatly appreciate it. So, really appreciate it, because the more I get, the more possible subscribers I could get. And if you can watch this video more than once, that would also be great, because I need this video needs the views. Alrighty? Mary? And so for the final question for you guys, what do you want for Christmas? Not related. Well, it's not related to the political thing, but it's off topic. What do you want for Christmas, and what's your New Year's resolution? Since this is the final, since they said this is the final one. And also, do you want to see Trump prosecuted? Or do you want to see him go in front, see him on stage competing and actually divide the Republican Party, or whatever? What would you want to fate of Trump to be? Let me know, okay? But until then, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Until next time, this is Jeff. Wait, let me try that again. Until next time, this is Jeff Bartos saying, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night, and happy holidays. As I sign off.